Hello, everyone at home or in the offices. It's a honor to me to be host today to the speech of Christine Lack. She's president of ESMA, and I'm very happy that we were able to invite her to the Woche der Marktforschung this year. We are very happy about the Woche der Marktforschung this year. Maybe it's a good sign for the development of the market research industry. We have about 20% more participants, like 8,000 registrations this year. Today, it's a little bit less in general. Maybe it's because it's a second day, the last week, but a warm welcome. Great thanks to our sponsors. Some of them you have seen already in the little spots, and you see a lot of them around me. So please see the sponsors who allow us to do this conference free of charge for the audience. Thank you very much. And it's the final day, as I said, today and tonight there will be a final event with iSquare in Berlin. So if you are in or around Berlin, don't hesitate to see the other market researchers, the other analysts around there. So, but now I would like very much to welcome Christine. Christine, would you switch on your... Yes, there she is. You told me you are in Connecticut and obviously in a hotel room, and it's quite early for you in the morning. So thanks a lot for getting up that early for us. And I know you have another presentation, a keynote on a live conference afterwards. So you have to leave us in about a quarter before 3 hour time, I think 7:45 or 9, then your time. Okay, thank you very much. Christine has been elected as ESMA president last March. You are the first female president ever, and congratulations for these elections. But also, you are running your own company. You are an advisor for companies that are active in the marketing or marketing service sector, and you have been founder of market research or market analytic companies yourself. I think you founded 3 of them, and you did exits with them with private equity. Also, congratulations for this. You are an investment banker, and in this role, you're also helping young companies to scale and to monetize their business. And for all these guest in our auditory who wants to expand in the US market. She is consultant how to enter the US market. And your contacts are at the end of the presentations, of course. You ranked it as in the top 100 of social media in the topics of sales, branding, and you are founder of Women in Research, a group of society. I think that's for networking, and it's a very nice website. I had a look on this, even if I'm maybe not the core group for that. And you presented a brief presentation for us, trends in the insight and analytics sector in a post-COVID world. So we are very curious to see this presentation. And to the audience, please feel free to put your questions in the chat, and I will either moderate them into the presentation or hold them for the discussion afterwards. Christine, do you want to take over?
Yes, thank you. I'm very sad that I am not in Germany today because I love Berlin. It's one of my favorite cities in the world. So for everyone who is attending the networking event tonight, I'm very envious. I wish that I could be with you all. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And this is an update to the presentation that I gave at Succeed last year, which was pretty much right after I was elected to my SMR role. And really what I spend a lot of time doing, not just within my SMR role, but within my role as an advisor and investment banker, is to really look at trends that are driving this sector in a what we hope is a post-COVID world, although everyone still seems to be getting COVID. So I think we're just learning how to live with it. It might not be a post-COVID world, but we're getting through it now, and you can see some significant growth in the industry. One of the things that I always do is I look at where all the money is going when I look at trends in the industry, and so I keep a sharp eye on both the private and public markets when I look at possible trends, because the investment capital flowing into this industry now is really unparalleled. I don't think we've ever lived through a time like this where there's been so much investment money coming into this vertical. And as you can imagine, that has a profound impact on the products and services and even the research methods that are developed in this industry. So as an update to some of the statistics I shared last year, I think the last time I presented, we were around an $80 billion industry. That's in US dollars. And now we're a close to a $90 billion global industry. And again, when you compare that to other industries that we think of as being quite large, the global coffee market is only about 70 billion. I'm a big digital music fan. That's only about 15 billion US dollars. So as you can imagine, market research, insights, and analytics is attracting a lot of attention, not just from entrepreneurs, but from investors looking to grow and finance companies in this space. There was a report that SMR put out 2 years ago when COVID first hit that talked about what some of the estimated turnover expectations were. And of course, we saw a bit of a dip in 2020 during COVID. We actually ended up performing better in 2021 than we thought. I think we thought there would be a larger downturn than what ended up happening, because we actually saw quite a bit of recovery in Q4 of 2021. And as you can see in 2022, because we were nearly 90 billion at the end of 2020, the end of 2021, we're going to be pacing well ahead of 90 billion by the end of 2022. So our industry is in a significant growth mode right now. Also, if you reference the Global Market Research Report, and if you're an SMR member and you haven't had a chance to read this report yet, I would really encourage you to log into your portal and download it. It's free for all SMR members, or if you're not an SMR member, you can purchase it on the website. And you can see here some of the trends that are very clearly taking hold in this industry and are really influencing are really being influenced, I think, by the venture capital and private equity money coming into this business, and of course also influenced some by COVID. Obviously during COVID, and particularly during the lockdowns, we were really largely reliant on tech-enabled research. Face-to-face research was really challenging. That said, we're still not seeing the type of recovery that I think we expected to see in some of the established research categories. The 2019 to 2020 growth was a decline of about 3%, versus what we see in the tech-enabled research sector, which grew by 10%. And in some cases, and I'll talk more about platform research here in a moment, but platforms are growing at 30% and higher. It's an extremely aggressive growth category, and you'll see why here in a few minutes when I share with you some of the investment numbers and where those dollars are going. Between 2011 and 2021, we saw also a huge increase again in the investment in the sector. 2020 was sort of a banner year for investment in this industry. A little over 4 billion was invested. But in 2021, we saw over $7 billion invested, which overtook even the investment levels that we saw in 2014, which was sort of the big data surge of 2014. And so, as you can see, investment capital is just skyrocketing, and we actually expect that we'll see an even bigger level of investment in the industry in 2022. You can also see here the investment by different business categories. And as you can see, marketing analytics, so really understanding consumers and analyzing data, is a major investment focus in 2021, surpassing market research pretty significantly, which again is why I think that we're seeing more of a decline in some of the established research methods versus these tech-enabled solutions. And full credit to CAMBR for this data. Simon and Chadwick and I sit on a board together, and so we tend to share data tables back and forth. So I want to give a shout out to CAMBR for tracking some of this investment data by our sector and by category. And again, you know, when I talked on the earlier slide about the 30% growth in platforms, you can see why that's the case. You know, if you just look at the investment in platforms for 2020 versus 2021, and if you're having a problem reading the text at the bottom, the green area is analytics platforms, the red is CX and UX platforms, and the blue is market research platforms. And the investment here is significant, almost $35 million in 2021 alone went into platforms. And there was a total of 165 million that was invested in platforms specifically offering concept and product development research. So if you look at specialist product platforms, you can see the amount invested in the country that they were in, the USA and the UK sort of leading investment, but we're also seeing an incredible amount of investment coming from companies in the Nordics. So Sweden, Finland, Norway, those are all pretty hot countries for venture capital and private equity activity. And then you can see other product research listed here. These companies might be a little more familiar to you on this call today. Suzy, which is growing really rapidly. It was their D series that they closed last year. A Test, One Pulse, and then Viper. You know, there's just a tremendous amount of capital flowing into this particular vertical, and of course that influences where we see the most growth coming in the industry, and in turn also influences our research methods, which I think is interesting. And one of the reasons that I think we're seeing more and more companies starting platform businesses, investing in technology development, or really doubling down on platform integrations is if you look at the sort of key drivers of value. So what investors value, what companies will eventually sell for in this industry, it's very much driven by the drivers that you see on the left-hand side of the screen. So, you know, the first being recurring revenue, very, very important. Then, of course, we get immediately into software versus services. Software is more highly valued by investors and buyers than services is. But that is not to say that you can't monetize services businesses. You can. Proprietary data, having mobile versus social capabilities, those are all really important factors that go into the value that companies will see, not only when they're looking for investment, but also when they eventually exit their businesses. And so that, of course, is influencing what types of companies are being started in this sector, and eventually what they're selling for. So just a few predictions that I wanted to share with you before we move into discussion and Q&A. I do believe, and I mentioned this last year, that we'll continue to see a surge of qualitative tech. I think that COVID was a big enabler for moving qualitative from face-to-face to online. And again, when you look at the types of platforms that are entering this space, qualitative is a big focus. I also believe that primary questions research will continue to decrease. And when I say that, I think it's because we're seeing a greater and greater interest and reliance on behavioral data and passively collected data. And so we are getting the what, that behavior from those types of data sets. And we're really using market research questions to find out the why behind those behaviors. As I mentioned earlier, I think we'll see a continued increase in investment in M&A activity. I think 2022 is going to be an even bigger year than 2021. We are definitely seeing skills shortages, and I'm not sure how the hiring situation is in Germany, but I can tell you in the US, the UK, and many other countries, it's very difficult to find talent right now, and particularly in the roles of data automation, AI, and data science. And then again, we're continuing to see insights more fully integrated with business intelligence within companies. And so making sure that as insights professionals that we're really data translators and that we understand how to work with multiple data sets is just of increasing importance to us, I think, as an industry. So with that, I think we'll move into a discussion and Q&A. I went a little longer than 10 minutes, I think, but I'll turn it back over to Hans for questions, and we'll go from there.
Christian, thank you very much for that very interesting insight on the industry. And do you want to switch off the
I will stop
stream?
sharing.
Or, yeah,
Yes.
so we are more in the picture. And yeah, you asked for the higher situation in the German market. I think that is quite similar to the US market. It's really difficult at the moment to find talents for the companies. And for example, on Marktforschung.de, we have a market for jobs, and that is running really busy because it's very hard to find good people at the moment. And
very tough.
Good luck for that, because the other way around would even be worse. More
It's
problem for
true.
the companies. Yeah.
It's
And
true.
yeah. Yeah, I was very impressed from some of your numbers. And maybe first, may I ask one thing? How did it happen that someone from market analytics from the field becomes an investment banker, or was it the other way around?
No, I'm have spent the majority of my career in market research. So I started out my career as a research analyst at Lieberman in Los Angeles, which is now Material. And then I segued into the technology side of the business. So I was the co-founder of OTX, which is one of the first big online research companies, and then got into software licensing after I sold my second company to Decipher, and sat on the tech business for a long time. And then as I, when I exited Decipher, I had to really figure out what it is that I really love doing. And I realized that what I really loved was not the starting of businesses so much. It was the scaling, the growth, and all of the problems and challenges that come with that. And so I thought, if I could just work with other founders all day to help them scale and monetize their businesses, that would be the most fun I could have, because I could then help people learn from the many mistakes that I made along the way. And as a natural progression of my consulting practice, of course, once you scale a company, the idea then, of course, for most people is to sell it. And in the US, in order to do any sort of banking or sales work, because it involves the sale of securities, you have to become licensed as an investment banker. And so I got my license 4 years ago. I would not recommend that process to anyone. It's very intense. It was 6 months of studying every night and every weekend. But I learned that I'm good at learning new things, even at my age. And it was a challenging process, but one that I'm glad I went through, because I do feel like I'm probably the only banker in this vertical that has been on both sides of the table. So I've been a founder, I've sold my businesses, I know what that process looks like. And I think my role is to help educate other founders on what that process is, to help them achieve the highest valuation that they can for their business, and to make sure that that banking experience is less painful than it was for me when I went through it the first time.
Yeah, that's great. I saw in our audience there are some listeners who are founders themselves, or they had made an exit already, or who made an exit and are now in the consulting business. So I think that's very important what you're telling to them. And um, when I saw your first charts about the market research expenditures in the world, uh,
Yeah.
I'm from so I learned that every cup of coffee we drink is the same amount in market research worldwide.
Yes.
So drink a lot of coffee, everyone, and we will increase our business. Um, of the worldwide gross national product, it's about 17% that is US. Of the
Mm-hmm.
worldwide market research or market analytics expenditure is more than half in the US. Or in
It
other
is.
words, roughly said, I made a little calculation with your numbers, and about 1/3% of gross national product in US runs into turnover of the market research industry. And in UK, it's about 1/4%. In European Union, it's just 1/10%, and in Germany, it's even less. Why that? Why is market research so much driven by America? It's not important for the other countries, or they didn't understand it, what we hope, so they will grow it, or what happens?
Well, we're a big country, first of all, and we consume a lot of products, probably more than most countries do. I think that when you look at the headquarters for a lot of major companies, they're based in the US. And so because of that, a lot of the research that's done, even globally, is commissioned out of the US. So although they're doing research in other markets and other countries, they're commissioning the research from a US headquarter. And because of that, it's being counted within the US research market.
Okay.
That said, I think that marketers in the US are extremely data driven now. I think there's a new generation of marketers that are less about the visual idealism behind marketing and more about how is that marketing performing. Is it resonating? There's definitely more of a focus on performance marketing now than there was in the earlier stages of my career. I think when I started out in research, which was 1996, it was very tough to measure ROI on a lot of campaigns. I can remember going to meeting after meeting, discussing how we were going to measure the ROI of television advertising. Now there are so many different advertising channels and so many different marketing mixes, and some of those are very highly measurable. And so I think that the days of having a CMO that's not data driven are over, and that's also why you see the connection now between business intelligence and insights becoming more and more tightly entwined. And I think it's really paramount to our future as an industry to understand not just how to work with primary research or first party data, but also how to work with lots of other data sources and how to combine them in a way that you are really getting a more holistic picture of what is going on with a business.
Mm. Okay, so maybe a message to the audience is, because in the marketing area, US is often running before and other countries are following. So hopefully the share of GNP will rise even a little bit in the other countries, and so that might be a, a source of further growth also for the industry
Yes.
in Europe.
I will say, some of the most exciting startups that I see right now are coming out of the Nordics.
Yeah.
There's great companies coming out of Sweden and Finland, and it's interesting because every time I go to a conference, I end up gravitating toward, I always try to check out what are the new companies that I haven't heard of before, who's there that I don't recognize, and it always seems like 9 times out of 10 it's a company from the Nordics.
Okay, that's good. And you showed us that tech is now about a third of the market, I think 30%, with
Yeah,
stable growth, and
yeah.
established research is like a little bit more than 40%. So how many years are there left? 2 years until tech is dominant in the market?
Yeah, I mean, well, in 2020, established research was about 38%, and tech was about 28%, but established research is just declining, about, well, it was 3% year over year last year, and tech was growing by 10%. So yeah, I would assume that was the amount of investment capital coming into this space and the focus of that capital, that we would expect to see tech-enabled research overtaking traditional within the next year or two. Now, that's not to say traditional research
Mhm.
or established research is going away anytime soon. I don't think that it is. I just think that it's not going to grow at the same pace that we've traditionally seen, and in some cases will be in decline. And I think you can see that trend when you look at the earnings reports for a lot of the bigger public companies that are full service research firms. Many times those firms are only growing through acquisition. They're not growing organically anymore. And I think that's one of the reasons why acquisition is so important to many of the big full service research firms.
Okay. You told us, or we've seen that Corona brought a dip in the market, but it
Yes.
recovered very well, and also it gave like a push forward in like digitalization, in work organization, stuff like this. And if we have now a current look at the Ukraine war, do you already see implications from that on the industry, or do you expect them?
From the
The
Ukraine war.
conflict in Ukraine, Russia, yes.
Yeah, yeah. It's hard to say. I mean, I definitely it's impacting big businesses that are based in Russia and have pulled out of that market, or have at least temporarily put a hold on business there. I do expect that it will have some impact, but what that impact is very hard to predict right now, because it's largely contingent on how long that war lasts. And I don't think any of us have, any view on that right now. I think many folks thought that the conflict would be resolved right by now and we'd be moving on, but that's not the case. Right now, it seems to be persisting indefinitely, which is unfortunate. And so, yes, absolutely, it will have an impact at some point. What that impact will be on insights, I'm not sure.
Mhm. Okay, so hopefully it won't be too much implications and not too long
Hopefully not.
the crisis.
Yeah.
Okay, and yeah, you showed that tech platforms is growing quite a lot, and you said primary questions research will continue to decrease. Holger sent us the question, so in which MR trends, very concrete, would you invest at the moment?
For sure, I would invest in analytics platforms. If you look at the types of platforms that are getting the most investment, it's marketing analytics for sure. If I was going to put my money anywhere personally, I would put it in reporting. So data analytics, and particularly analytics platforms that can work with multiple sources of data. I think, again, one of our challenges as an industry is becoming more familiar and more comfortable analyzing multiple sources of data and understanding how all of those data sources work together to paint a more predictive picture of what is going on with a business. So for sure, for me, it would be analytics. I do think, again, that we're seeing a lot of growth in qualitative tech and qualitative platforms. And although I do think some businesses are going back to face-to-face research, I think the fact is that many businesses are going to stay online because the profit margins are considerably higher from doing online qualitative than doing offline. And so I am seeing some of the companies that I've worked with in the past or that I'm working with now sort of pivoting away from having focus group facilities or having the overhead of having facilities. I think, some of these businesses were seriously impacted during the shutdown because they had a lot of overhead from having all of this space that they were paying for without being able to use. And so I think that's had a visceral impact in some ways. And people want to limit their exposure to that much overhead. And also, if there are equally effective ways of getting that data online, many companies are permanently moving that way. That said, I'm a big fan of face-to-face research. I think it's, the online experience is not a substitute for seeing people in person, and I think that it is a different experience and you do get different types of feedback. So I don't want to downplay the importance of that, but I do think many business decisions are impacted by profit versus maybe what's the best mode of data collection.
Okay. Um, would what would you? We've seen we do a survey in the German market every year, the context list, and we've seen that many also of the more traditional market research companies had a good performance, especially in the last year. So quite a healthy market. But in the long run, we see all these trends. What would you recommend the management of a more traditional mid-size agency to make the business? You had the nice word enkelfähig, so I may pick up this in another interview. I liked it.
Yeah.
Uh, what would you tell them? We have some of them here in the audience. Some
Uh,
free advice
well, I mean,
from Christine Luck.
free advice. Yeah, I mean, as I said, I don't think traditional research is going anywhere. I do think that uh, you know, I would say look cautiously at what technology solutions you can implement while staying true to your methods. I think that's important. I think oftentimes as an industry, we're slow to adopt new methods or new technologies, and I would, if I were a full service research owner, I would probably be a bit more aggressive on that front. Um, I also look at other opportunities to optimize those businesses. So I think oftentimes the processes that we employ are not the most efficient. I think there's lots of tools, particularly in terms of data processing and data analytics, that we have access to now, particularly using AI and other data processing methods that are more efficient than some of the more traditional methods we've had in the past. And so I would say, look at all the processes that you have in place and what are the opportunities to optimize and increase revenue per head count. That's one of the key factors that I look at is, how efficient is a business. And I think that's something that investors look at too when they look at services-based businesses is what are the efficiency ratios and how are those businesses performing. So I don't believe that every company is meant to be a tech company. I don't believe that you have to be a tech company to achieve a high valuation or to be profitable. I don't think that's the case, but I do think there are tools and techniques that you can use to improve efficiency and profitability, and also improve the quality of not only your data, but also of your employees.
Mm. But by the way, there's another question that fits well. We have a lot of discussion here about the borders, the what is market research, what
Experience
is
working data.
analytics. Would you see, would you call customer experience is part of the industry, or would you see it that another field? Because that's also a field where we've seen huge investments.
Huge investments. Yeah. When we look at the size of the industry overall from an SMR standpoint, we do include CX in those numbers. So yes, customer experience is part of it. What's interesting to me is so many businesses over the last few years, Qualtrics being one of them, have pivoted very heavily into customer experience, which is actually a smaller part of the industry than market research as a whole. That said, it is a more turnkey business. It's a more, it's a more predictable business because you're not reliant on custom research, which is how most of market research has been built. And so there's some efficiencies that I think companies obtain by going into the CX area, but it's a pretty cluttered playing field at this point. You've got Medallia and Qualtrics and some of the biggest companies that are playing on the upper end of that spectrum. And so I think the good news for a lot of market research firms is that the middle market, which is where the bulk of the spend is pretty wide open, not just in terms of technology, but in terms of services that are offered. So I see a lot of opportunity because of those movements.
Okay, great. You have shown us this chart with the huge investments in the industry, especially in 21. Is that rather a flash in the pan, or is it kind of a trend? And if it's a trend, will it be affected by the switch in the interest rates? Will it become harder to raise private equity or venture capital if the interest rates are up again?
Yeah. This is such a tough question to answer because I'm not an economist, but I will say that I think that um, a lot of the inflation, at least that we're seeing in the U.S., is an interest is interesting, and I say that because although we see inflation rates rising, we also see corporate profits at an all-time high, and so we see prices increasing, but also profits are increasing. And that's not something that you would normally see. Normally, if you see pricing increases, it's because profitability has dropped or it's become more difficult to get materials or there's some other factor going on at play. But it's almost like companies are using inflation as an excuse to increase prices, which is then, obviously driving inflation rates. So it's an odd cycle that I'm seeing right now. I will say that there is a tremendous amount of money, or what is called dry powder, within the private equity world and within the venture capital world right now. There are more people interested in buying companies than there are companies available to buy in this sector. And so oftentimes, I'm hunting for companies on behalf of buyers and having a hard time finding folks that are willing to sell at this point. And some people are holding out for higher valuations, or they're expecting the market to continue to go up. I do think in 2022 we'll see more investment capital and more private equity money coming into this industry than we did in 2021. But whether that trend will persist into 2023, I think it's too early to tell. And I think we'll have a better indicator of that moving into Q3 and Q4 of this year.
Hmm? I had a look at the audience list, how many participants are there that may have a company to sell to sell
If you're interested
for
in
you.
selling your company, please
They,
contact
they
me.
they may contact you if you don't
Yeah.
have enough from those. So what? Please tell us a secret. What is the next big deal coming?
I can't tell you that, actually.
I was afraid
I
that would.
know, I cannot tell you that. What's interesting is I do hear about a number of deals that are about to happen in the industry that I'm not necessarily directly working on, but because I do advising for private equity firms, I get exposed to some of the deal flow. And there are still some big deals that will be announced either later this quarter or early in Q3. So it's an exciting time to be in this space. And I think there's also some exciting partnerships and some really interesting acquisitions that will continue to see some consolidation in certain sectors of the business, and particularly in the sampling world, which we've already seen a lot of in the last year with Cint's acquisition of Lucid. So stay tuned. There's a lot more coming.
Okay, we will be very curious what's happening there. We
Yes.
have 1 minute left because you told us you have to make a hard cut for your
I
keynote
did.
afterwards.
Yes.
For your presidency in Isomar, if you have 2 wishes that could happen, what are your main objectives, or what do you think is the most pressing from that point of view?
Yeah, well, I would say, I would say that as a council, our major initiative for this term, because it takes a surprising amount of work to get things accomplished in a two-year period. For us, further globalizing SMR and making sure that we provide equitable access to membership, it was a very important thing, initiative for us, and we did that when we rolled out our global variable pricing. And so it's now adjusted by market, which I think creates a more equitable membership pricing rate for folks, particularly in markets where their GDP might be lower and their currency is weaker than the euro, and so it creates more of a equal playing field. So we did accomplish that. I would say if there's 2 things we want to make sure we accomplish during the rest of the term, it's of course to find Finn's replacement, which is no small task. Finn's been an amazing DG for SMR, but we've got an amazing slate of candidates. We're in the thick of the interviewing process and hope to be announcing our new DG/CEO in June. And then, of course, it's SMR's 75th anniversary this year. It's our diamond anniversary. We are doing our first face-to-face Congress in Toronto, and this is our first face-to-face in 3 years. So we're really excited about it. And we're really hoping that everyone will join us there in Toronto. I know it's a big trip, particularly if you haven't traveled much since the pandemic, but we've got an amazing program lined up and lots of fun events planned. And so we're hoping to be able to connect with our global research community there face to face.
That sounds great. So hopefully
Yeah,
see us in Toronto. I wish you good luck with your objectives and with your company. Thank you for getting up that early. Good luck with your keynote. And
my
to the
pleasure.
audience, if you don't mind, stay in, not you, Christine, but the audience,
Yes,
stay in 1 more minute because I have a short question and a note to you. And Christine, thank you very much. Have a good
yeah.
day.
Thank you
Bye.
for having me. See you all. Bye.